The enemies of Christ are desperate to explain away the resurrection. Because if there is no resurrection, then there is no Christian faith. One claim they make in an effort to disprove the resurrection is that he never really died, but merely fainted, only to wake up later and present himself to the world as if he died and came back to life. Now consider why that makes zero sense. He was arrested and tried from around 1 a.m. to 8 a.m. He walked trial to trial with no sleep and no food, only threats and interrogations and beatings. After his sentencing, he was scourged. The Romans used a short whip that had metal balls, bone fragments, and hooks attached. It would carve the flesh, often exposing muscle and organs and causing the skin to hang like ribbons. He was then beaten and humiliated by a whole Roman cohort, that is, about 600 soldiers. They placed a robe around him, which would have helped stop the bleeding, but at the cost of drying and meshing with his shredded body. The soldiers then put a crown of thorns on his head and beat his head repeatedly with a staff, mangling him further. They then reopened his wounds when they removed the robe. He was then made to carry the 70 to 100-pound horizontal crossbeam about half a mile, a task he could not complete himself, but had to have someone help him carry it the whole way. When he arrived, he was thrown to the ground and nailed to that beam, grinding dirt into the exposed parts of his body. Nails were driven through his wrists and feet. The metal would rub against nerve and bone. Once lifted up, his shoulders and elbows would dislocate, stretching to at least 6 inches longer than normal. In this position, he would be unable to breathe, unable to exhale, unless he pulled on his wrist and pushed on his feet so that he could raise himself up high enough to force old air out and let new air in. At the same time, his backside would rub against the wooden beams. He repeated this push, pull, breathe, rub process for 6 hours, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., until he decided that it was finished and gave up the ghost. He was then declared dead and pierced through his side by Roman soldiers, men who knew the difference between death and fainting. Finally, his body was taken down, wrapped in linen, and placed in an empty tomb. A large boulder blocked the entrance of that tomb, and a Roman guard was assigned to protect it from intruders, and his body remained there for 3 days. Now, the people who propose that he fainted want us to believe that he experienced hours of extreme physical and psychological torture, resulting in fatigue, blood loss, severe shock, concussions, dislocations, dehydration, starvation, a slow suffocation, and a likely heart attack, only for him to faint, wake up 3 days later with no food, no water, no medical attention, and be able to tear out of his linen cocoon, be able to roll away a 2-ton boulder, and then fight off a Roman guard, and then present himself to his followers in such a condition that he passed as normal and healthy. Not to mention he would have to arrange for his body to be unfindable post-death, Otherwise, his deception could be exposed. Him fainting or swooning and then claiming that he died and came back makes zero sense because of what he endured. So, what actually happened?